It is now time for our next lightning talk of the day with one of our gold sponsors, Leidos. Eric Moore, Senior Vice President and Chief Technology Officer at Leidos Civil Group, is about to talk about innovation with purpose, pushing the frontier of innovation to drive discoveries and their practical applications. So please join me in welcoming Eric Moore. Thank you very much.
All right. Good afternoon. How's everybody doing? Good? All right. I'm in that weird time when everybody's lunch is starting to come down, and it's like, I'm going to try to get you through to the afternoon. So thank you for having me here today and for the opportunity to talk to you about a topic that I find really interesting and a topic that I think will be interesting to this community. Something that I think doesn't get a lot of actual investigation beyond sort of anecdotal stories and corporate talk. But I think it's really important. It's important to us as a community, and it's important to what we do every day. So hopefully you'll find it interesting, and hopefully you'll take away from it some ideas that you can take back to your teams, back to your companies, back to your organizations to try to challenge how you're operating today. And that's the culture of innovation. What drives innovation within our organizations, within our society, within our humanity? And some of the topics that the panel just walked through around lessons learned and around understanding how to leverage those lessons learned to achieve innovation, I think fits really well into some of the things I'm going to talk about. So I come at this starting with looking at the history of human innovation, right? And I think it's pretty easy probably for most of us today to think about the pace of innovation accelerating in our lifetime and in our recent past. You probably just have to think about what's happened with generative AI in the last sort of 8 months to kind of feel that intrinsically. But I like to look at it from a much longer history. And so there's a couple of ways to consider this. The first is, you can look at innovation as it relates to technology on a linear scale. And when you do that, what you find is basically everything that we interact with, use, appreciate in our society and in our life today would basically be a single point on a long line on a linear scale. And so it's not really all that useful to look at. Another way to consider this is, since the emergence of Homo sapiens, 97% of that entire history was before the invention of the wheel, and only 3% of our time since Homo sapiens emerged has been post the invention of the wheel. So basically everything that we appreciate, experience, and use on a day-to-day basis is things that were invented or discovered or innovated in the last 3% of Homo sapiens' time on Earth. It's a really remarkable thing. It's actually very hard to digest. Couple of other ways to consider it, right? The time from writing to the invention of paper was about 7,000 years. The time then from the invention of paper to the invention of the printing press was about 1,500 years. It's about 4.5 times faster, right? And then when you accelerate to the last century, right, something that we can all appreciate, the time between the Wright brothers' first flight and the moon landing was 66 years. Right? This is like orders of magnitude faster for something that really should intrinsically seem much more difficult to accomplish. So I think it's true, right? Innovation is accelerating. And so if we take that fact, then the question is, well, why? Why is human innovation accelerating? And why is it accelerating at the pace that it is? There's a lot of explanations for this that people have. One of the first and most cited explanations for this is population size. So in the last 200 years, our population has grown 10 times, right? So we were a population of less than 1 billion people, and now we're over 8 billion people. So if you think of innovation as an individual exercise or an individual probability of the emergence of an innovative solution, we have 10 times the people that we had 200 years ago to discover innovation. It's really remarkable, right? So that would probably drive human innovation. The next often cited example is life expectancy, and this obviously goes hand in hand with population, right? Life expectancy in that same period of time has doubled, right? It's more than doubled, actually. It was under 30 years, and now it's over 70 years. And that obviously increases the population size. But it does more than that. There's a really important thing about life expectancy that drives innovation, and that's, the first, say, let's call it 15, 20 years of a human's life is largely spent learning, right? It's spent learning, experiencing, adapting to our environments, to our culture, to other people around us. If our lifespan is 30 years, that only leaves 10 years for people to use that knowledge and that information in novel ways to create innovation. But if it's 70 years, have a much longer opportunity to use that knowledge and actually generate innovation from it. And so I think those two things obviously work together, but in different ways to help accelerate innovation. And then the last that's often cited is this idea of a compound effect. The idea that our innovations today are all combinatorial. They're all built on innovations that we've had in the past. And so if we have a larger collection of innovations, technologies, processes to build upon, we have more things to recombine, right? So we have more people, we have longer lives, and we have more things to work on recombining to deliver innovation. And so I think this is really compelling. You look at this and say, okay, well, that's the answer. The answer is all of those things drive the acceleration of human innovation, especially over the last couple hundred years. But I don't know about you, but I find that really unfulfilling, because there's nothing in that explanation that I can use to exploit, to try to use to my advantage, to try to actually drive acceleration of innovation. Right? I can only do so much to increase population size. I can only do so much to increase life expectancy. Right? So if that is all there is to accelerating innovation, there isn't much that we can do as individuals, right, or even within our lifetimes, to really try to harness the power of accelerated innovation and try to supercharge it. And so I was left trying to understand, well, is there more? Is there more of an explanation for what drives innovation than just these three things? And that led me to the research of Dr. Joseph Heinrich. He's an anthropologist from Harvard, and interestingly for this audience, he was an aerospace engineer for Martin Marietta as his first career before deciding to go back to school and become an anthropologist. And he approached this topic from a slightly different angle that I found really interesting, and his approach was, why, as a species, have humans uniquely developed this sort of breakaway acceleration of innovation? Why humans, right? Why not other species? There are other species that have large populations. There are other species that have longer lifespans than humans. And so those things aren't terribly unique. And so why have humans been able to achieve this pace of innovation? And when he started to research this, he came to a couple of conclusions. One is that he came to the conclusion that we as a species developed a thing that he refers to as the collective mind. And it's this idea that the collective mind of us as a society is significantly greater than our individual mind, right? It retains way more information than any one of us could ever learn, any one of us could ever house. And that when that happened, when that collective mind became so much greater than the individual mind, it created this Rubicon that he calls, or this tipping point, where all of a sudden our evolution was no longer driven by typical genetic evolution that drives other species, but it was actually driven by our cultural evolution. So all of a sudden, we actually started evolving as a species based upon this idea of the collective mind. So there's a couple of things that came out of this, right? We as a species are born with a very malleable brain, much more malleable than our cousins, apes, for example. When they're born, they have a whole lot of their knowledge is already embedded. It's hardwired in their brain. When our kids are born, they are not born with that same hardwired knowledge, but they have an amazing capacity to learn, and to learn really, really quickly, and to learn from observing others. And so we as a species have evolved specifically to maximize and take advantage of this idea of a collective mind. And so this cultural evolution is now actually driving the genetic evolution of the human species. And so as we continued to evolve in this way, what became much more important was our societal interconnectedness. right? As the collective mind started to drive our innovation and drive our species, what really became important was how connected as a society we were, and how did we maximize the use of our collective mind. And what that means is that it's actually our culture as a species and as humanity that enables us to innovate at the pace that we're innovating. It isn't individual genius, but it's actually how we connect the society together and draw on this collective mind as efficiently and effectively as possible. So think about it this way. If we had 8 billion people, say 10 times the number of people we had several hundred years ago, but everybody lived on an island by themselves, would the fact that we have 8 billion people lead to greater innovation? No, it wouldn't, because those people wouldn't have been interconnected. They wouldn't have been drawing on the knowledge from each other, and in fact, that cultural mind would have started to atrophy. So I would suggest that in that time period when we had this massive population growth, where we had this extension of our life expectancy, the other thing that was happening during this time period was our societies were connecting, right? Culturally, they were connecting, and the technologies for travel and communications and all kinds of other things were enabling us to connect our societies together in a way that we had never been able to before. And that allowed us to accelerate this innovation. So it was all of these things working together, right? And so I found this really interesting. I mean, I think this is a really appealing thought to me, because this is something that I can actually use, right? I can use this information to understand how to build teams, how to organize, how to lead, right? The kinds of people that we need to work together with in order to accelerate innovation. And so, you know, I took the opportunity then to look at the company that I've worked for almost 20 years and say, how have we organized and structured ourselves to maximize the use of this collective mind? Have we done that, right? And so I looked to our corporate values, and I'm sure everybody who works for companies here have corporate values. We did not build ours referencing Dr. Heinrich's work. That just isn't what happened. But I looked at our corporate values in retrospect, looking back at Dr. Heinrich's findings and sort of my research here, and came to the conclusion that our corporate values created an environment, created an organization and a culture that did exactly what his research shows accelerates innovation. It creates an environment where people feel willing to challenge norms. They feel willing to engage with each other. They are open and trusting of their teammates, their strangers, partners, their customers, and we build environments where we take advantage of this collective mind, right? And so I was really happy to see how our values of integrity and inclusion and collaboration, commitment and agility all work together to really take advantage of and maximize the use of this collective mind. So a couple of examples that I want to highlight here that I think show how we deliver innovation through this exercise. So whether it's bringing together multiple national labs to do research on Ras proteins to try to find cures for cancer, or whether it's using 20 plus years of research that we have done around autonomy and artificial intelligence to build an entirely new class of surface warships that are fully autonomous for the US Navy, that's now informing how we do mission planning in space and on the moon, or whether it's work we're doing for DARPA around cognitive load analysis so that we can develop adaptive systems for operators in all kinds of different domains to ensure that they can operate safely within their cognitive load parameters. These are all things that we've accomplished because we were able to bring together multiple disciplines across the scope of our company, working with our partners and our customers to maximize the use of our collective minds within our community. And so I just want to encourage everybody, as you think about how you run your teams and how you run your organizations, think about how you are maximizing this collective mind. It's really, really important that individual genius, while really, really important, is not the thing that is going to maximally accelerate your innovation. It is how well you connect your teams, disparate teams, diverse teams together in order to maximize the use of that collective mind. And so I hope that you found that somewhat interesting. I think it's really valuable to take some of these thoughts and actually try to ground them in some scientific research and some historical studies that have been done. It makes it more useful, I think, when engaging with teams and talking to them about the importance of this interconnectedness, to be able to point to real research that's been done that proves that this is actually how we have evolved as a species, is to achieve innovation through this kind of collective action. And so, again, I point back to the prior panel. All the conversation that they just had around lessons learned, building on each other, partnering, how to bring the international community into the new paradigm, I think is vitally important, because we have to constantly be looking for opportunities to expand that collective mind, and that is how we will achieve greater acceleration of innovation. So that's all I have today. I really appreciate your time. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to kind of nerd out on a topic that I find really interesting. I hope you found it interesting as well. And good luck encouraging your teams to continue to work really collaboratively, delivering innovation for you, your customers, and all of your missions. So thank you. Have a great rest of the conference.